The female boss went home for the new year, only to discover that the villa she bought for her mother's retirement had been occupied by her second uncle's family. Her aunt was decked out in gold jewelry, acting as if she was the owner of the villa. Meanwhile, her mother had been reduced to a servant. The furious woman immediately demanded her uncle's family to move out. Unexpectedly, her cousin confidently claimed that this was something her mother owed them. The woman was still confused when her mother suddenly spoke up. Half a year ago, her mother had accidentally fallen and lost consciousness. It was her second uncle and aunt who carefully took care of her, and even paid for the high medical expenses up front. Not wanting to worry her daughter, her mother had been hiding the truth all along. After hearing this, the woman was a bit moved. She then asked why the family maid was no longer around. Her aunt quickly answered that the maid had been fired for stealing. Although the woman was unhappy about this, she thought about how her uncle's family had cared for her mother, and chose to swallow her anger. To show her gratitude to her uncle's family, she immediately took out her phone, preparing to reimburse the medical expenses they had covered. But her uncle stopped her with a magnanimous expression. He said, "There's no need to repay the money, but her cousin, who had been dating her boyfriend for 3 years, should get married. All they needed was a downtown apartment as her cousin's dowry, and the past would be forgiven." Hearing this, the woman trembled with anger. A downtown apartment's down payment alone cost over $1,000,000 yuan. This was more than 10 times the medical expenses they claimed. When the woman refused, her uncle immediately presented a prepared receipt. It showed that the medical expenses exceeded $1,000,000 yuan. The woman was left speechless. To avoid putting her daughter in a difficult position, her mother volunteered to sell the villa and move back to the old house in the countryside. Seeing her mother's guilty expression, the woman felt a pang of self-reproach. To put her mother at ease, she reluctantly agreed to her uncle's demand. The next morning, her cousin brought her boyfriend to the sales office. She specifically requested the most luxurious apartment there. Seeing the 3,000,000 yuan down payment, the woman was furious. She had been reluctant in the first place, and now she had to spend 3 times more to buy her cousin a home. When the woman hesitated to pay, her cousin loudly accused her on the spot, saying the woman was ungrateful. If it weren't for their family's sleepless care of her mother might not even be alive today. Looking at her mother, who seemed at a loss for words, the woman finally suppressed her anger and reluctantly agreed to sign the contract. While the salesperson was preparing the paperwork, the frustrated woman stepped outside for some air. At that moment, a cleaning lady suddenly called out to her. When the woman saw the cleaning lady remove her mask, she was stunned. It turned out the cleaning lady was her family's former maid. Under the woman's questioning, the maid tearfully revealed the truth. Half a year ago, after her mother fell unconscious, it was she who stayed at the hospital day and night to care for her. Her uncle's family suddenly appeared. Not only did they drive her away, they also took credit for her efforts, and even forged payment receipts to deceive the mother and daughter. Hearing the truth, the woman was furious. To expose her uncle's family, she obtained the hospital payment records from the maid. At that moment, her cousin was still smugly waiting for her to come back and make the payment. The woman smirked coldly, saying they needed to clear some things up first. She took the hospital receipts out of her bag and confronted her uncle's family about the forged payment records. Her aunt quickly tried to explain, claiming the maid had fabricated fake evidence out of spite, and urging the woman not to be misled by outsiders. The woman replied coldly, "If that's the case, why don't we go to the hospital and verify the records?" Her aunt stammered in response, trying to change the subject by urging her to buy the apartment first. The woman refused with a cold smile, stating that if the receipts were fake, she would report them for fraud. Realizing the truth could no longer be hidden, her uncle finally confessed. It turned out that in recent years he had suffered investment losses and was deeply in debt. His family had long been burdened by financial troubles, unable to pay for the medical bills. They used the guise of caring for the mother to scam money from the daughter. Her cousin's boyfriend was outraged upon hearing this. He immediately broke up with her, accusing her family of not only lying, but also trying to saddle him with a huge debt. He stormed off after finishing his rant. Her cousin cried and begged her boyfriend not to leave, but it was to no avail. Watching her uncle's family in disgrace, the woman coldly declared they had to vacate the villa immediately, or she would call the police to handle it.